Greetings. Welcome back to the ETCMA Meet the Expert interview series. I'm your host, Dr. Aram Akopian. On July 9th, the European Traditional Chinese Medicine Association will be holding its annual European School Leaders Day event. It's an important annual event that brings together all of the leaders in the education community together for strategic planning and meeting. In preparation and as a prelude to that event, we have a special guest with us, an invited speaker for that event, Dr. Jenny Yu. Dr. Jenny has a vast degrees and knowledge in the TCM field. She's currently the Dean of Eastern Medicine Department of the Southern California University of Health Sciences. She has a doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine from the Pacific College of Health and Sciences, Master of Science in Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine from South Baylo University. She has a Bachelor in Arts in Linguistics from the University of Southern California. She's an author, a publisher, a speaker, and a researcher. Dr. Yu, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ram, for the nice introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to hosting you at our event. Now, in preparation for that event, I think one of the challenges that our organization and also the European community of education leaders is often tackling is this whole concept of degree programs and accreditation, et cetera. So I thought maybe I can ask some questions in preparation for the event. What is the historical significance and the impact TCM degrees have had where they were established in the past?
So in the United States, the acupuncture and Chinese medicine, I know in Europe we call it TCM, in Asia we call it TCM, but here in the US it seems like it's two components. One is acupuncture and one is Chinese medicine. But for the purpose of this meeting, we'll just use TCM. So acupuncture first became known or as a practice as a profession in the U.S. in the early 1970s. How it came to U.S. was when President Nixon, after a long Cold era, finally had the opportunity to go visit China. So during that trip, it was a big news. It was the first interaction between U.S. and China at that time. So a lot of reporters went with him. So during that trip, one of the reporters suddenly developed appendicitis and was rushed to the hospital. And during the surgery, the patient was awake while the surgery was going on in his abdomen. And so the US team were surprised what's going on over there, that somebody is cutting open an abdomen and the patient was awake. And that was when the President Nixon's team learned, oh, there's something called acupuncture anesthesia. So long story short, that was how acupuncture then came across the Pacific Ocean to the United States. That was in the early 1970s. The first acupuncture program in the US was in 1975 in Massachusetts, the New England School of Acupuncture. Abbreviation, we call it NESA. And since then, there are more and more acupuncture schools that developed. Up to date, there are over 50 programs that are accredited in the United States.
So how did these pioneering TCM degrees shape the development and the recognition of traditional Chinese medicine as a respected field of study and practice?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, having a degree, it's important to have a degree that is clearly stated of the content, of the level of training, the hours, in order to separate practitioners from the image of a barefoot practitioner. So I think that's really important, especially we're introducing a profession that is unfamiliar to other healthcare professionals that have been around for a long time. So in other words, in the US, acupuncture first became a profession in the early 1970s. Actually 1975 was when acupuncture became a legalized profession. So even though 75 seems like a long time ago, it wasn't, right? It's only a little 40 plus years comparing to the what we call the conventional medicine here. That would be the Western medicine that have been hundreds of years. Even chiropractic in the U.S. have been 200, almost on the way to 200 years. So in other words, compared to other healthcare professions, the acupuncture and TCM here in the U.S. is still like a new kid on the block. So having a pioneer degree in like this really need to separate the barefoot practitioner image. And primarily it assures the public, right, which is the patient or other healthcare professions who may have to work, co-manage patient with any acupuncturist, also to give them the assurance that practitioners that were trained from an accredited program or degree at least have a standard of educational training. So I think it's primarily, it is very important to let the public know what the profession does. So pioneering these degrees, it's absolutely necessary. And also, the word vocational, it could really confuse other people. What exactly are we doing? Are we doctors? Are we not doctors? Are we, so it's very important to set these guidelines that people can have a clarity about.
One of the challenges that I think we face as we move forward, and it's perfect that you honed in on that, is safety, is public safety. And I think it's important to stress that these programs are probably designed, at their core is to guarantee or to provide a confidence level for both the practitioners, the community at large, and other physicians that as it relates to public safety and patient safety, these pioneering programs can address that above and beyond the barefoot practitioner, as you said. Thank you. Very well said. How did these degrees and TCM education contribute to the evolution of TCM education and in the current landscape in regards to these programs and the accreditation? You mentioned the changing landscape. Maybe this would be a good time to talk about that.
Yes. So first of all, in the U.S., for anyone that can legally practice acupuncture and TCM must be licensed or have a certificate or something that is issued by organizations or state board or national board that they can practice this. Without this, even though they have degrees from elsewhere, they cannot practice legally. Okay, so that's something very important. So the degrees in TCM in the U.S., bottom line, they have to be an accredited program and degree from an accreditor. In the U.S., it is ACOM, ACAHM. It stands for the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine. This is the organization that oversees all of the educational program in the United States. So without the accreditation from this organization, the program is not legit. that is. And there are also some states that also require the state board approval. For example, California requires both. A program needs to be accredited by ACOM as well as approved by the California Acupuncture Board. So these processes are in place. Circle back to the word public safety. It is actually several things. Primarily is the accreditation from ACOM and from the state board will assure a student, if they enroll complete and graduate from these programs, then they are eligible to sit in for licensing exams. If a student goes to a school that does not have an accreditation approval, then they will not be eligible for a licensure. In other words, they will not be able to practice in the United States. So these degrees, the road of the evolution, right? I think that was the word that we use, evolution. At first, it was probably in the early 70s. There was not much standard in place. Schools develop on their own and then develop their curriculum, and then into the 80s, into the 90s, the 2000. Now we're in the 2020s. I think every step of this way, everybody is a learning process. After all, this is a new profession. It's probably not new in Asia. It's been over 5,000 years, but it's new here. It's new in Europe. So, it's a learning process for everybody. And nothing is perfect at the beginning. So there is a lot of tumble and fall, learn and correct, trial and error. And so I think the purpose of today's meeting is also, I'm very honored and happy to share what we've learned throughout this past 4 decades with our friends in Europe, with our schools in Europe, so that we can learn from each other, share information, and then maybe minimize trial and errors, reinventing the wheel for our schools in Europe. So I think, I'm sorry, I diverted a little bit. Back to the subject. Degrees must be ACOM approved. All of the schools in the United States, and some states also require state board approval. These programs provide really assurance to the patient, right? Back to in regards public safety. So if a student graduates from a degree that are approved, at least it tells the public they have a certain level of minimal training, okay? Comparing to, there are actually other professions now in the US are trying to have a piece of the acupuncture practice. There are, for example, doctors of physical therapy, doctors of chiropractic. In some states, not in California, but in some other states, they could just take a short course, 100 hours or 200 hours, and then start practicing. For us who actually are classically trained, and we actually go through the standard process of having accreditation, all that is very scary. There is definitely a difference between someone who is 200-hour trained versus someone who was 2,000 plus hours trained. So, these are things that are happening in the education and professional landscape. So we are monitoring that very carefully. After all, our bottom line is patient outcome. Another thing in the United States, I am not familiar on the healthcare system in Europe, but in the US, health insurance is a big part of people. In regards to mainly it's the cost. If somebody does not have health insurance, health is extremely, extremely expensive. And health, in order to have a dialogue with health insurance company for them to cover the acupuncture service, they need evidence, right? So they need to see that, oh, okay, so there is actually a system called accreditation for the licensed acupuncturists or TCM practitioners. And so the accreditation evolution process is not only important for teaching or educating the practitioners, it is also extremely important to show legislators when they are making decisions about about the health benefits for people in America, for insurance company to accept this practice and the ability to reimburse the practitioners. So for the insurance purpose, without having a program that is accredited, that is out
Yeah.
of the conversation. So I think the evolution of degree, not only is to provide training purpose, it also is to really support the quality of life to the public, so that one, they can know that whoever they're going to has been classically trained in an accredited program. They are licensed, so it's not like a add-on from
Yeah.
someone. Let's say, a doctor of physical therapy does 100-hour training. Oh, and then now suddenly they start practicing acupuncture.
Yeah.
That's very scary. And number three, it is for insurance purpose. Insurance company will need to look at the person that they cover the insurance. Are they trained, right?
Yeah.
And also for the eligibility of the acupuncturist who can then bill
Provide.
or submit the insurance,
Mhm.
and also in turn to get reimbursement. So these three pieces are important and part of the evolution of having a degree.
Great. Great. Thank you. Now, you mentioned earlier about ACAHM, the ACOM accreditation. How does that accreditation process take place? Maybe you can illuminate a little bit about what to expect in terms of the accreditation process, and why, in your opinion, is it important in ensuring the quality of the standards across platform and across countries and across regions as well?
Yeah. So yes, the accreditation, there's a standard process, involved in application, and then it involves on criterions. Currently, ACOM has 10 standards. Each standard may have their sub-criterion. So bottom line, the ACOM accreditation process is they need to know what are you teaching? Are you meeting the minimal, for example, minimum program? ACOM requires a minimum number of teaching in acupuncture and manual therapy, in herbology, in theory and diagnosis, and biomedicine. And also another component is ethics and communication. If a school meets the ACOM standard, and ACOM will, so here's the process. A school who wants to get ACOM accreditation, they will need to submit what they call a self-study to address those 10 components. Okay. And then once they submit that self-study, ACOM Commission will review that. And if everything's okay, then good. Or if there's anything that needs supplemented or it wasn't good, ACOM will send the report back and say, oh, this area it doesn't meet the standard, that there will be communication like that. Okay. Once that self-study report, so in writing first, right? So once the writing part is good to go, ACOM will schedule an on-site visit where ACOM will select couple individuals, usually 3 to 4 individuals and compose a site team, and send to the school to actually conduct a 3 to 4 days visit. Number one is to make sure that what they said in their self-study is true. And number two is to also look at the school site. Do they have a clinic? Do they have a classroom? When they're in the clinic, are they following guidelines? Things like that. So there's two parts to an ACOM accreditation process. One is a self-study report, and the second is a site visit. Once that's completed, ACOM Commission will then review, and based on their review and findings, will award a certain years of accreditation. Okay. This is actually a very lengthy process. So for the benefit of the school, the longer years, the better. Yeah. Also, it doesn't mean, let's say if a school gets awarded 7 years, doesn't mean in the 7 years nothing happened. There is still an annual report that is every school needs to submit to ACOM. So that's like a mini or a report they have just very standard, like how many students do you have? So every year we still need to do that. But in regards to the accreditation itself, there is also between their initial visit to the awarded timeline, there is something called mid-cycle report. Because I think ACOM thinks, hey, you don't want to wait till 7 years to
revisit.
brush up. It's good to keep the momentum. So they usually will have a mid-cycle. So that is in between. If it's 5 years, then it's 2.5, right? If 7, something like that. So it is just to, so their job is to just to make sure that what the school has reported in the self-study is true, and to keep them in good standing. In other words, if a school have something that wasn't good, or it's also a public information on the accreditation website. So I think it not only really pushes the school to keep up the standard, it's also a peace of mind for students who are looking which program they want to go to.
Great. Well, a lot of really good information and a lot of points to think about. I'm excited to have you there. I'm looking forward to learning more from you, Dr. Yu, and I'm sure our members will be as well. I wanted to personally thank you for the time you took and the effort for our interview, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to meeting everybody.